Hey everybody! Welcome to the Good Evening Kitties podcast, a Tales from the Crypt review. My name is Melissa, I'm your ghostess with the mostest, and today's episode is Season 1, Episode 3, Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone. It's a very jazzy name. Anyway, so this episode came out, or was aired, June 10th, 1989. Its screenplay was written by Terry Black, and it was directed by Richard Donner. He also did the Lethal Weapon franchise. He directed The Goonies, and it stars Joe Pantoliano, who was also in Memento and The Matrix, Robert Wuhl, who was from TV's Arliss and 1989's Batman, and Kathleen York, who was also in TV's The West Wing. So I'm going to go ahead and read the description in the box here for Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone. Shoot him, drown him, hang him, zap him with a cajillion volts. Hey, it's a living. A man who receives a surgical graft of a cat's 9 lives becomes a carnival sensation with his dying act. This one's a pretty fun one. I do like this one. It's an interesting concept, and I always, of course, like anything with carnivals and sideshows and things like that. So, you know, it's pretty fun. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into Season 1, Episode 3, Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone. So it opens up, the Crypt Keeper is in his crypt area. And it really looks great. I was noticing that it's just, they do such a great job on making his crypt up. Everything's just so dusty and filthy, and like you can really believe that he's in it, and so that's really neat. So he pulls out this big dusty book, he blows all the dust off of it, and he opens it up to show the page of kind of like an EC comic drawing of the page. And of course the Crypt Keeper is voiced by John Kassir, and he's doing a great job, and the again, the puppet looks great. So he's opening up the show, and so it starts out in a carnival, the Big Top Carnival. Not a real creative name, but what you can do. And everyone's walking through it. You know, there's all the lights, and it's a really neat carnival. It's got a lot of stuff. It's got like the barkers and jugglers, and it's got a half man, half woman walking around. And it's got jokers and clowns, and it's got, you know, all the different carnival foods and rides, and it really helps to set the mood. There's like the bearded lady, a man on stilts, and all that. So it's really neat to see. And it takes you into this tent. There's a man, he's barking, so he's yelling about everyone to come see the show.
Come gather round, gather round. Come from far, come from near, gather round, folks. Right over here. Come see the show. 100% natural, nothing artificial. Guaranteed no pesticides, but perhaps a homicide.
And he's, you know, got his little mustache, most likely fake, and he's telling everyone to come in to see a man who's going to die right in front of you, but come back. And they have like it's a big mound of dirt, and there's a big crowd, and they're going to bury him alive. And his name is Ulrich the Undying. And he's going to be sealed into a coffin and put under for, 6 feet under to figure, until he dies by suffocation. And so they're really explaining it. They got a huge mound of dirt. He will be buried alive at the stroke of midnight, and they will let him out at noon the next day. And by then his oxygen should be gone, so he should be dead. So Ulrich, the guy being buried, who the main story is about, gets into the coffin, and, he's laying there. He's got his hat on his chest. He's making it very dramatic. He lays down, and they shut the coffin lid on him. And he smiles to the crowd, before he shuts it, and everyone's super excited and eating popcorn because people want to see him die for some reason. And so he's in there, and he turns a little lighter, or lights a little candle, and he starts talking to us.
When they dig me up, I'll be dead. Just like all those bastards want me to be. But I won't stay that way.
And he's kind of narrating a little bit of the story and kind of wanting you to go back and see what has happened. So this is actually in the end of the show. So they're going to go back, and he's going to explain about how he got in this situation. So he's in an alley. I'm guessing it's probably months earlier. They didn't really say, but he's kind of a bum. He's looks like he has a drinking problem. He's living in some cardboard boxes, and a man who's a scientist is coming up and sees him in the alley. And I guess you can tell he's a scientist because he's got a little suit and a little bow tie. I don't know. So he shows up and he offers Ulrich a chance to be rich. And he takes out a flask and like pours it on his face and like all around him. And I guess apparently that means being rich. I don't know. And he says that he can get all your dreams. Part of me was like, I hope that's alcohol. I mean, it could be water, urine. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's alcohol, but it didn't seem to bother Ulrich. And he's telling him he's going to give him, a bunch of money. His life savings will be his if he lets him do this small experiment. And what does Ulrich have to lose? He's living in the cardboard box. So he's like, all right. Comes down to the lab. And he starts explaining, the doctor starts explaining to Ulrich, the experiment itself, which they have a cat. And basically, he's going to take the cat's 9 lives and put them into Ulrich, which means, in theory, that Ulrich himself will have the lives. He will have many lives, and he could die and come back again. So you're in the lab, and it's kind of like little ultrasound-looking things of cats, and it talks about the healthy house cat and shows his blood, and the cat near death, what their brain looks like. And Ulrich isn't looking too into it. He looks pretty tired and everything. And really, for the situation that Ulrich is in, the fact that he probably has an alcohol problem and lived on the streets, he really understands what the doctor is trying to say pretty quickly, I thought. He was just like, oh, so I'll have the lives and that'll be from the cat. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right. I feel like it would take a little more explanation, but I guess you're just like, okay, yeah. So yeah, he's going to remove the gland from the cat, the doctor is, and put it into his brain, and that will somehow give him the lives. And now he's like, oh, again, he's got it. So he agrees to do the surgery. And it's a pretty cute cat on Thing. Poor thing has to die in the show, but oh well. I mean, it's fake, so next thing you know, Ulrich is waking up, and his head's all wrapped, and he's in a surgical gown, and he's having a splitting headache. And as he turns over, you can see there's some blood on the back of his head, and he's like, oh my gosh. And then he's worried about, like, I can't believe I let you shave my head. And really, I don't think he really shaved much of it. It looks like it was put more like in the back of the neck. And I'm like, really, that's what you have to worry about? But so he's like, how do you feel? He's like, I'm not great. And he asks if it worked. And the doctor's like, absolutely. Yeah, totally worked. Now you have 9 lives from this cat. And they kind of like show the cat, and he's under a little bloody blanket because I guess he's dead. And so it's kind of funny because Ulrich's like, how do I know that I have 9 lives? And right away I'm like, oh, he's going to have to prove it, And so the doctor's like, well, I have to kill you. And he's like, no. And, there's a really quick graphic shot to the head. So he shoots him in the head with a Luger. And it was done pretty well. But, like, yeah, it's kind of like out of the blue. He's just like, oh, and he shoots him. Which really, it's got to be a little tough kind of, like, going through all the deaths anyway. Like, because then you're like, what it's like each time. So, yeah, he gets shot straight to the head. He lays down back onto the surgical gurney, and he's dead. It shows it on the, the screen there. His heart has stopped. The doctor's double checking. He's definitely dead. He's super excited about it. Even though, oh, okay, yeah. I was going to say, he hasn't popped up yet, but now he has. So it's like he immediately pops up, like pretty quick, considering he got shot in the head. So the doctor's checking his heartbeat. It's gone, and then he pops up. So Ulrich is alive. And he grabs the doctor, and he's mad that he tried to kill him. And the doctor's like, I did kill you. And then that's when he's just like, oh my gosh, it actually worked. And the doctor says you can still die 8 more times. And so now that has happened, he's like, okay, well, I want my money. And so the doctor's like, okay. He's like, before you go and spend it, on a bunch of alcohol, how about we kind of partner up, make it a little more money here? Which is interesting to me that the doc recommends going into the carnival business. I'm not sure if he knows someone at the carnival, but for him to come up with this, I think it'd be kind of hard to come up with this situation. So what they decide to do is they start working with the Barker at the carnival. And basically, they're building him up to be, Ulrich the Magnificent, the man who cannot die. So people start catching on, and they're going to pay money to see him in different ways kill himself and come back and, they'll make a lot of money. I mean, it's actually, it's a short-term plan, but they could make a lot more than the life savings that the doc has. But he's telling Ulrich, before we get going with this, you got to be careful not to kill yourself, like in anything, silly, like don't shave and cut your own throat or, anything like that, because these lives are precious. Personally, I'd be counting my lives pretty good. Speaking of earlier when I mentioned that Joe Pantoliano was in Memento, I think I'd be like tattooing or writing it on my body how many lives I had, or like knocking them off, drawing like a small cat, like a tattooing a little small cat for each life. Like the first thing I'd do. Though I also wouldn't get into this business. So they go to the carnival and they're with the Barker. And at first, when they go to see the Barker, he's not super into it. He doesn't quite get the fact that he could, die and come back, which of course that's normal. So he's like, wait, what do you mean he actually dies? He's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, which I'm kind of surprised you'd be like, well, let's try that. So, because he says, I can only do a limited amount of performances, but it's going to make us a lot of money. And so the Barker's like, all right, I'm in. And the doctor's super excited. And now they're at the show. And they have a chamber set up, a drowning chamber. And the first show is going to be Ulrich. Now that they're calling Ulrich the Undying, they're going to have him in a drowning chamber. It's going to fill with water, and they're going to watch him drown, and they're going to leave him there for an hour. So there's a lot of people who showed up in different business suits. There's a woman played by Kathleen York, who's the kind of like the she's like the presenter. Like if you were on like The Price is Right or something, like she's presenting the tank to everyone. And the doctor's there, and he's in his doctor outfit to kind of make it more exciting. And there's lots of just regular people. And he will remain underwater for a full hour. He's sitting there chained in a chair. The doctor's name is Dr. Manfred Mann. I don't think I mentioned that. So Dr. Man is the guy who did the whole experiment. And he says, no, my name is Dr. Emil Manfred. And he's like, whatever you say, Doc. But I kind of like Dr. Man. That sounds fun. So they got some tubes hooked up there, which is weird because they have the tubes. There's like, he's sitting there and he's got his little like cap and he's in a little silly, like old time male swimsuit, and he's chained up and he's kind of floating in the tank. And they got about halfway filled. But they have these two tubes that I guess are also pumping water, but then later the doctor uses them to kind of look through the stethoscope, which is kind of weird. Like, I don't know, I guess because it's kind of hooked to his heart, but I still feel like it'd be kind of hard to listen through that to really know if he was dead or not, but it works, I guess. And so Kathleen York, the girl who's kind of like presenting the tank, has a little crush on him, and so she wants to go out to dinner with him later, and she's super excited. So like right before he dies, she's funny, she's good. She's like, so after you die, can we go out to dinner later? And she's not super bright. She writes diner later on the tank in lipstick for him to see, but she puts it backwards. Somehow he looks at it, he figures it out. He says, yeah, sure, we'll go. He's kind of like, all right, like through the tank. He's like, okay. So it just says diner later with a question mark on the outside of the tank. She's like, after you're dead, I'll wait here. He's like, all right. So she's pretty positive he will come back. I still would be pretty nervous. I mean, she's nervous, but I think I don't know. So he's in the tank, and he's starting to die. And he's seen flashes of cats before he dies. But he's starting to die, which, again, it'd be horrible because it's like you have to go through each of the deaths. Like, drowning sounds horrible. And you're like, all right, well, I'll go through it, and then I'll remember what it was like to drown when I come back. Like, it just it sounds a bit traumatic. So he's in there, and he's fighting it, but he can't get out because of the chains, and he dies. And so they decide to keep him in the tank for a full hour. And everyone's looking at their watches like, that is a long time. Like, And so the doctor's listening from the stethoscope hooked to those tubes, and it's kind of weird because it's kind of weird because then water comes through the holes of the tube, which I don't know. I don't know if that's how that works, unless it's a different kind of stethoscope, because usually there's a flat end on the end. I don't think water can come through it. But water's come through in the hole anyway, and he says he's dead. And he says, thank you. They drain the tank. And he's warning everyone, this could be his last performance. But it is not, because Ulrich is a man who lives to die again. And so he's like, resurrection! And he starts, resurrection! He's wanting him to like come back right on the snap. Come back right on the spot, Which really you gotta kind of figure out, when you're gonna come back. So he's dying. He's dead, and he's like laying in the tank and they're draining it and it's not looking good. And the people are starting to leave, And he's like, okay, well, he better come back because this is going to be, we just watched everyone. We have, this is kind of a felony, So everyone's leaving. And Kathleen North's character is freaking out. And then there you go. Then he comes back. Then all of a sudden, Ulrich's sitting there. He spits out water. He scares her. And he comes back. So that's one life down. And her name is Coralie. I'm sorry. He asked what her name is. And he was like, yes, I would like to go to dinner. And she's still looking pretty upset, which I don't blame her. She probably really thought he was going to die. And then she's like, oh, great. My life is over. I'm going to jail. And so then the Barker sees that he's back. And so he's like, oh my gosh. And he's screaming resurrection.
Resurrection! He's alive! Resurrection! Gather round!
And everyone comes running back in with cameras and taking pictures, and they're excited, and he's back. So now they're super popular. Now everyone's listening or watching. The doctor's counting all his money afterwards, and Ulrich is like, they're going to let me drown on the news and they'll pay me $10,000. To me, that's not really a whole lot of money, but I guess then in the situation it is. But because this is, in the late 80s, early 90s. But I guess if you really have no money, then you might as well, 10 grand sounds pretty good. And then the doctor's reminding him, don't forget 60% of the money goes to my longevity research. So meaning he'd only get $4 grand, which he's not super happy about that. But I understand where the doc's coming from. I mean, he wouldn't have this if it wasn't for him. And he's like, doc, relax, I got a date. And so he grabs some money out of the doc's hand and he takes Coralie out on a date. And so the doc, they show him back in the coffin and he's still narrating the story. And he's saying, it didn't take long for me to get killed again. So now this time they have him, he's going to get hung. And so they really go all out. He's in a cowboy outfit. There's, it looks like an old saloon. They have like some backdrops and things and a horse. And they have him in a little cowboy suit, a little cowboy outfit. And Coralie's going to pull the switch, that's going to hang him. But with some of these deaths, you have to be a little careful. But yeah, so there's so many people, it sells out. But you really have to be a little careful with some of these deaths because if, say if he gets hung and he's laying there and then he dies and then he hangs and they pick him up and drop him again, that's another death, So they sold out. Everyone's super into it now. And they're warning everyone, you may want to turn your eyes away. It's pretty crazy. They have him up on the block. Coralie's not wanting to pull the lever. And he's like, just do it, pull the lever. So Coralie won't pull the lever. So he reaches over and he pulls it. And he hangs. And he's dancing around all creepy. He's hanging and everyone screams. And Coralie's like, oh my gosh, he's dead. And I still think I would need, if I were watching it, I'd still need, the doctor around. Because it's like, she's the one who just said he's dead. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, he's dead. And it's like, you don't know. So he's hanging there looking pretty dead. And a little time later, he comes out. And he's grabbing onto the rope and he's back. And everyone, Coralie's grabbing him. Everyone's clapping. And he's like, hey, again, don't drop me because it could be another death. That's not, I don't want to waste it. So they cut the rope. Get him out. This one's a little creepy because he kind of broke his neck in a way, and he's got it all bandaged up. He's got a neck brace, and he's talking really gritty like that because he broke his voice box, which is kind of gross. So the doc's telling him, we're making all this money, and Ulrich's super excited, and so the doc's like, well, as long as I get my percentage, I'll be happy. And Ulrich's like, all right, yeah, I know, you're the guy counting the money. Now Ulrich is starting to he's wanting to make more money. So he needs to get rid of the doc, which is kind of, in a lot of these episodes, especially in this one, there's a lot of backstabbing, people just getting greedy with money. So him and the doc are driving, and it's a rainy night, and the doc is just so excited about all his research that he's going to be doing, and Ulrich is telling him this isn't going to work out. And And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, I thought we were going to make a lot of money. And Ulrich's like, well, you're half right about that. It's going to make me a lot of money. And the doc's like, wait, what? And he says he's got to breach the contract. And he goes, you're about to die in a terrible car accident. And he starts speeding up. And it's raining. The doctor is freaking out. He's like, that's murder. And he's like, well, who would guess, because I need you in the act. Who's going to think that I would kill you? He says he still has 6 lives. Why would that? He still could make money. And so he crashes, wastes a life on that. And so now he's down to 5 lives. And so next thing it shows is the next death. And this one is kind of neat. They're going to electrocute him. So they have him in a nice suit. There's a huge group there of people. They have him hooked up to like a generator thing. And he's got his 2 arms tied together, stretched out, and in each hand he has a light bulb. So I guess those are going to light up when he gets electrocuted. And this time, pretty sure they made it to where it seemed to me like they were trying to make it so you could kill, like the audience member could kill someone and not feel guilty about it, which is interesting. And like that would definitely make some money, I would think. So, they said one of you lucky folks is gonna pull the switch and kill him. And Corley's going to draw the number, and she starts to read it, but then the Barker stops her and changes it to a different number. So that definitely makes me think that the person paid a little more to get into it, and so they decided to let this person do it and just act like it was a draw, but it wasn't. And the lucky number they pull is this little old lady, and she's super excited, and she's just a sassy old lady. She's very excited about doing this. She's missing her teeth, she got glasses, she's laughing, she's so excited. So she's going to pull the switch. And Corley's like, congratulations, you get to fry my boyfriend. And so they ask Ulrich if he has any last words, and he dedicates the death to Dr. Manfred, that Dr. Manfred would want him to continue his, this thing and that he's doing. And someone's like, shut up and cook him. And he's acting really sad. He's got cuts all over his face and acting like he had nothing to do with the death of Dr. Manfred. So the little old lady is excited.
Are you ready?
You bet your ass I'm ready.
So she pulls the switch, and he gets many, many volts. He's shaking. He's being held up by the 2 ties on his wrists, and the old lady's super excited. This one's kind of creepy because his one eye starts to bleed a little bit, and it's kind of dripping, and it's kind of freaky looking. And so, he's hanging there, and he's dead. They turn the switch back up, and he's dead. And everyone's clapping, and they're waiting for the resurrection. And this is where Ulrich is kind of figuring out that certain deaths take longer to come back to. This one, they really think he's dead, and he ends up in the morgue. So they're at the morgue, and Corley is still like, no, he's going to come back. Just taking a while. So the 2 guys are working there in the morgue. A bunch of cameras and things come in. And Corley's freaking out. She's like, no, you can't. It's my boyfriend. He's coming back. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And like, what do you mean he's not really dead? And he's like, you could have fooled me. It looks like he's dead. And so he's getting ready to do it. And then all of a sudden, Ulrich pops up. And the guy at the morgue makes a sign of a cross with his finger and the tube that he was going to do the embalming fluid with, and just like falls back into the sink, just falls, and they're like, all right, cool, you got me out of there. And they ended up making, for that death, $50,634. So they're really starting to make some good money. They're banking a bunch of money up, and, the cameras are there, so now they're going to be even more popular. So he's like, that one was a pretty close one. Got to kind of watch, electrocution, apparently, he's like, I don't, it's going to do him in, and he has like, I don't want to see what happens if I do get embalmed, if he'll come back, like that'd be weird. So he made special arrangements for next time, should that happen again. Corley is going to get his body. So this next one, this one's kind of cool. They have it set up like a little forest, and there's a bear that's going back and forth, and it has a little heart missing out of the middle of his chest, and they have a crossbow set up, and now you can pay an extra $1,000, and you can shoot Ulrich and kill him. So basically, you're definitely getting the chance to shoot him, kill him, and not feel guilty for it. So this first guy is kind of nerdy, and he pays the $1,000, and he gets up there. And it's kind of weird because he goes to shoot, he takes his glasses off, and he really can't see very well, which is, I don't know. And he goes to shoot, but the Barker and Corley don't really move out of the way. And I'm just like, what? I don't know why they're standing right in front of him. And I kind of like the way it's shot here. It's got a lot of pressure on it, like they use like a fisheye lens, and it's kind of making it like everything's coming from all ends, and it's crazy. And so again, the nerd guy goes to shoot, and they're not moving out of the way. They kind of duck and aim him, and so he shoots, and he like hits the bow or something off of Corley's head into the tree. So you only get one shot. So he's done. So next is a guy and his son who definitely doesn't want to do it. They're both wearing matching shirts and hats, and he wants the son to be a man and kill him. And the cameo by the little boy there is, if for any of you old kids who watch old 90s shows, Salute Your Shorts. The kid there is played by Michael Bauer, who also played Donkey Lips in Salute Your Shorts. And he's the kid who doesn't want to do it. And so his dad's like, come on, like man up and do the shot. And he ends up kind of blowing it on purpose and kind of shoots down. And the son's just like, I didn't do it on purpose. I meant to hit him in the balls, apparently. So this next guy comes up. He pays his money, and he was a state fair archery champion in 1987. So everyone's really excited because now this is going to, it's going to happen. It's going to go down. And he shoots, and he hits him right through the heart, kills him. Ulrich makes a real dramatic death, comes out from behind the bear, falls down, and he's dead. This is one of those things where they would definitely have to pull the arrow out, because I would assume it would just keep killing him, I guess, if they didn't pull it out. So they pull the arrow out. The shooter gets it as a prize. He's super thrilled about that. He's got like a little bloody arrow. He's very excited. Everyone's cheering. And this time, now they have the body in the back. And they have a different doctor checking him out. And he's definitely dead. I don't think these doctors really know what's going on. There's also cops there. And Corley's, she's doing what she's supposed to do. She was supposed to get the body. So she's like, I need someone to help me move the body. And the cops are like, sorry, you can't take him. And she's like, well, I have this note. I have a special arrangement. And he's like, that doesn't matter. And so she pulls out this huge wad of money. And she's like, if there was any objection, I was supposed to give you this. And the cop's like, this is more than I make in a year. So he's like, all right. And then he asks her, he's like, did you need help moving the body? And so they move the body, and he comes back. And now they're in the trailer, and they're talking, and they're drinking like champagne, and he's starting to feel pretty tired. It's really starting to wear on him. And he's talking about how they have all this money, and he gets 80% of the box office, and they get paid from HBO, and some side bet money. And people are super excited about his situation. He gets $60,000 just from that one there. Just from that one death, they get $60,000, which means the circus is taking in quite a bit of money. And so he's like, $60,000, maybe we should take that and go take a vacation and go off to, Vegas and Bahamas and Paris. And Corley is getting this look in her eye, and she's rubbing his back, and she's like, oh, that sounds wonderful. And then she takes out a comb out of her purse and realizes she grabbed the wrong thing. So then she takes out like a small knife, and she stabs him in the back just once. And he rolls over, and he's super upset, and she's automatically like praying right away for what she did. And then she grabs the money and she leaves. Again, some more backstabbing. And she says, good luck to the rest of your lives. And she takes the money and she leaves. She's getting out of this carny life. He's super upset. And now he's really mad because she double-crossed him. But he said, I still have one life left. I'm going to do one more really big event and make all this he wants all the profits, 100% of the profits. He's going to make all this money, and then he's going to be done, and he'll have all this money to live the rest of his life with. I'm not sure how much he would make on this big one, but I don't know if it would be set for life, especially if he's going to go do a bunch of vacations, but he seems to think so. So the Barker agrees to do 100%, and they set up now back to the current time where he's getting buried in the giant pit. And so now they got him in the coffin, and they're lowering him down. It's midnight, and they're starting to bury it. And there's like the news are there, reporters, and he's back in the coffin. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be set for life after this." And that poor kitty had to die, but that's okay. And then he starts realizing, wait
a minute. That cat, it died. It already died once. It only had 8 lives left.
So he starts to realize, he's counting in his head because he didn't keep good track, that if the cat already died once, this is actually his last life. And now he's buried, and he's freaking out. He's like, oh no, he doesn't have the 9 lives anymore. He's done. This is it. He's going to end up suffocating down here and not coming back. And everyone's pretty much gone. They're all going to come back the next day and watch him come out. So he's in there and he's screaming. And he realizes he's going to suffocate because he didn't count right because he wasn't paying attention. Which I think is kind of creepy, you know? I mean, I would have kept attention to it, but like, it's creepy because, yeah, you're like, oh no, yeah, the cat died, so that would have put it at 8. So then this black cat shows up out of nowhere, comes over to the grave, kind of looks like he's going to take a crap in the dirt around the grave, and the candle starts to go out, which really, that sucks out a lot of the oxygen as well, I think, when you have a candle lit, and he dies. And there's a cat sitting there by some roses, and the episode ends. So he doesn't get any money, and then it cuts to the crypt keeper, and that black cat's there in the crypt, and the crypt is patting him and saying, "Oh, nice kitty." So the best crypt keeper pun of the episode is, "Crypt keeper, you're so punny."
They could have put it in between Wheel of Misfortune and the newly dead game. Unless they buried it in the wrong time slot.
Funny. But yeah, so that's the Crypt Keeper's pun. So that's the end of the episode. Ulrich didn't make it. But I have a little bit of trivia here from IMDb. The director, Richard Donner, cameos as an audience member during Ulrich's burial death, and he can be seen chanting, "Ulrich, Ulrich, Ulrich," along with the crowd. His wife, Lauren Schuler Donner, producer of the X-Men franchise, is sitting beside him. Also, another trivia, the ringmaster tells Ulrich that HBO has sent their check. Tales from the Crypt was produced and aired by HBO. So that's pretty much I have for that one. But yeah, so everyone, thanks for listening. This is the Good Evening Kitties podcast. The next episode will be Season 1, Episode 4, Only Sin Deep. And I'll see you next time.
I just had quite a scare. I actually thought my heart was beating again.